Welcome to the Lucky 13 podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Lantz.
I'm the good-looking one, as you can tell. I'm Josh Hauser, unless you're listening. And okay, whatever, let it go.
Yeah. So we're vested up here.
We are.
All three of us.
Yeah.
It's finally fall. It's been here in Indiana. You're double vested.
Yeah, I am. Do you ever call it the Han Solo season?
No.
Where, forgive me, I'm going to get in trouble with somebody, but my wife will wear the high boots, the jeans, and the vest, and she's dressed just like Han Solo. Yeah, so I call it Han Solo season.
All right.
Just keep that between us. Don't let her know I said that out loud.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got a guest with us today. I'm going to let Josh, you introduce our guest, because the next two episodes are going to be with our guest here.
They are.
And we're going to talk. We're going to make some education available relative to the mental game of sports and business. But why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
So as we talk about Lucky 13, I have 8 kids. 4 of my kids have been able to go through life with Ben Carnes, who's our guest today, as part of their life. And when you realize that your 25 and 24-year-old are having struggles and they're learning how to get through and cope through it, you have to ask yourself, what a great job I did. And then when you start to dig in, you find out that there was some coaching done behind the scene by this quarterback school and this mental training plan. And like, what is that? And then you dig in, it's like, that's the guy I used to coach football with. And so when I started digging in and realizing that the village that raised my kid, that there's more people who need Ben Carnes in their village, is where I said, okay, how do we get him in and start telling people about what his journey's been? So this is Ben Carnes. He's a Westfielder by trade, born and raised for the most part. I would call you Westfield
from middle school on.
Yeah. So
middle school on.
You had enough well water to fit in, so we appreciate that. And now is running a wonderful company that I can't say enough good things about, but I actually want you to tell us about the mental training plan.
Sure. So started off back in 2013. Football team went to a state championship, and we fell apart in that big moment. And we went back and said, how do we fix everything that's going on? Because knowing that each of the different players were dealing with stuff in their own mind and body. And so that really kind of kicked off this journey to take what I'd been doing on a small level in a room with just my position group to say, how do we apply this to a whole team? And then quickly found out it's not just football players that need help on the mental side of the game. And, you know, as they got older and started using some of these things in the real world, then it was, holy cow, this is changing people's lives, not just helping them play football better.
And then in 2022, you went all in. We went from just you in a case to 96 different schools you've been in some way, shape, or form now, 14 different states. And when Mike and I got a chance to meet you, we were like, holy smokes, we love what you're doing for your community and what we're doing for athletes, but we're like, holy smokes, as an entrepreneur, who's training this side as well? So, Mike,
I think that's an important thing. Before a listener who doesn't like our sports references hits pause or stop on this, we're going to ask you to unpack some things about your program, and then we're going to translate those into, and because right now your program's really focused on sports, but we're going to translate that in, because what the aha for us was really about, these things translate into the entrepreneurial world and that sort of thing. I want to give one thing before you start, because we got to have
important.
When I was hearing your story, what was interesting to me is you unpacked that from 2002. And by the way, for those people who aren't in Indianapolis, Westfield is a suburb of Indianapolis.
Carmelite.
Okay. And so they have, football team. That's where your kids played and all that kind of stuff. So you gave a stat that from 2002 to 2012, the football team went 40-76, which was a 35% win ratio, and they had one sectional championship.
Yep.
Then starting in 2013, you started training a lot of these things, and I know you give credit to 3 different things that transformed, but one of them was your program. From 2013 to 2023, the team went 95-41 with a 70% win ratio, 8 sectional championships, 4 regional championships, 3 state runner-ups, and 1 state championship.
Correct, with some more headed on this year that.
Yeah, they're already added to it. We could say 9 sectional championships.
Well, we're not going to go.
We got the sectional done already.
We're not going to go into that. But
those are real results, and
yes,
our
100%.
Listeners are results-oriented people.
Right.
So say more about
that.
And
I think that proves this wasn't a good kid that came through. This wasn't a good class that came through. This is sustained success over a period of time. When you look at these 11 years next to these 11 years, they don't even compare.
So as I think about entrepreneurs, they have a humanized exceptionality already. But we talk on this podcast a lot about 80% systemized predictable. So help us as we talk to a high school athlete or to an entrepreneur. What is an 80% systemized, predictable item that we could take and plug in and use on the regular, and no matter what phase of life?
So focus cycle is what comes to mind first. And I'll be honest, there's a specific golf program that comes to mind. They hire me to come in every year and give the focus cycle talk. And the people most furiously scribbling down notes are the business owners in the back who are trying to either A, win their own club championship, or B, they're trying to help the 26-year-old, that's walking into this $10 million deal with them that's got shaky hands or doubts. Do I really have what it takes? Are people really going to want to purchase this? Things like that. Yeah. So the focus cycle was kind of the tool that we came up with when, let's say you're in a room with 130 football players and you've got somebody trying to catch a punt with shaky hands. You've got somebody else that's an emotional wreck. They're in tears. You've got another kid that's doubting, I don't know if I have what it takes. I don't know if I can do this. What's the tool that we give them? And that the answer is the focus cycle. And the first part is, right now, none of us and nobody listening is paying attention to what the bottom of your feet feel like because your brain doesn't think that's important. So there are things that we have to get people aware of first. And so we'll start off by saying, what's your big event? And, maybe that's you find out that your best employee just quit. Maybe that's you just dropped a touchdown pass. You just threw an interception. You missed a putt. Whatever that moment is where all of a sudden now we have all these cortisol levels are spiking. My heart rate's out of control. I got muscle tension. I'm doubting, are we going to be able to do this? And so once we identify that big event, then we narrow in and say, okay, what were you focused on? Was it, maybe it's into the future. How are we going to meet this quarter's goals? Maybe it's in the past. Oh no, this is like the last time that so-and-so served it into the net. Now we're toast. We're not going to be able to win. Maybe it's all internal, like, gosh, I just want this so bad. I've worked so hard, prepared so hard. Sometimes it's external. What's coach think? What's mom think? What do our investors think? And then once we help them identify what they were focused on, want to know, what was that little voice saying? Was it, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. I don't know if we're going to be able to win. Then we have them figure out what happened physically. So that could be muscle tension. That could be shaky hands, heart rate's out of control. And all of those things create emotion in the middle part of our brain. And so now...
Can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
So when I identify what that voice is, because I just had that voice happen to me today. I had to walk into a meeting I wasn't prepped for, and I walked in, and that voice in my head's like, what are you doing right now?
And for the listeners... Okay, he wasn't prepped because he learned about the meeting 5 minutes before it was going to happen.
I did, yeah, because I prep for everything.
Because he preps for everything.
And so I know I already had the information in my head, but I have to go through preparation. Yeah. And so what would I do with that little voice? And if we're going to get to that in a second, so be it. But I want to know, because then I felt it by sweating profusely.
Yep.
So if you asked me that, when I'm listening to you, I was like, holy smokes, he's talking about me. The voice is in my head. I'm sweating profusely. What should I have done?
Yes. And I imagine all the listeners had that example where they thought, oh, this is like when this happened. So how do I fix? And then fill in the blank. So I want to keep going through the process and the framework, and then it's going to answer you.
Please. So thank you.
So now at this point.
So we got, hold on.
Yes,
so we got the big event. So what was that event? Likely something not positive.
Yep.
Right? What are you focused on when that big event happened? Right? What's the voice saying, and how are you feeling physically? So pick up from there.
And then, how are you feeling emotionally? Because now we're moving into, you've got this amygdala in the middle part of your brain. So maybe you're feeling out of control. You're feeling unconfident. You're feeling anxious. I've got some people that just get pissed. Some athletes that put in so much time and work that this happens and they just get mad. So now, what do we want to do? Instead of just, we usually during the presentation watch a video. It's about 3 minutes. And it explains what the lower part, the middle part, and the top and front part of your brain do. And so now that we have a basic understanding of, okay, this was just a reaction. Like, for example, you step off a curb in New York City, a car lays on its horn. You don't have to think. You're just going to instantly jerk back up onto the curb, be like, holy crap.
And flip them off. Got it.
Sure. And so that reaction has now happened what do we want to do about it? Well, if you play your best golf when you're confident and in control, or maybe you're a quarterback and you just need to be calm, whatever that is, don't just hope that the confidence fairy is going to come like sprinkle confidence on your head. So many times we just like sit around and hope and wait, and it's like that's not a strategy.
A good
So
tactic.
if you want to feel confident, then do the things that it takes to generate confidence. And so that's now we're working our way backwards. So if you've got, you can think of like a little, we've got a handy dandy little diagram that has different parts of the brain and stuff like that. But really, you can just do it on a table and have those 4 things across the top, what happened automatically. And now let's be intentional. Okay, well, if you want to feel confident, calm, in control, let's write that down. And then we always start with the body. We always kind of work our way backwards, because if you don't get some blood to the front and top part of your brain where you can think logically, then you're not going to be able to do the rest of these steps. So that's step 1. We teach them diaphragmatic breathing. It's not take a big breath.
Okay.
It's we need to be inhaling and holding for at least 8 seconds so our lungs have time to absorb that oxygen. And then we exhale slowly and pause for some combination of 8 seconds. If the listeners could get on and just Google diaphragmatic breathing right now, and you're going to come up with 10 different experts that have 10 different ways to do it. Really what we do is have guys take out a stopwatch and time themselves and figure out, this is based on my lung capacity, the best way to do it. We teach them some forced muscular relaxation, just like you can choose to control your lungs with the front and top part of your brain. You can do the same thing with muscle tension. So if you're tight, you can tighten up, and then you can relax those muscles, and now you're using that top and that front part of your brain to control muscle tension, not just automatic. So now we've got the emotions we're headed toward. Our body is now feeling not so physically out of control. We come up with a go-to statement. And
I heard this.
yeah, so the short version, I was in the middle of getting my master's degree, and we're getting ready to go play a team down at Lucas Oil, regular season. And this coach, the D coordinator on the other side of the ball, had been coaching longer than I'd been alive. And so I was in a negative headspace. We didn't traditionally score very many points or beat this team. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And so it said, write down all the things that you know are always there, no matter what. I said, I watch a lot of film and I'm organized, not a real impressive list. And then it said, write down what you will achieve. And I said, I'm the best coach in the state. And it was like, there was this voice in the back of my mind, like, best coach in the state. You're not even the best coach on your staff. What are you talking about? And so then it said, put them together. It said, I put in the time, I put in the work. I'm the best coach in the state. And then it said, say it 50 times a day. And I was like, 50 times a day? Like, is this actually going to do anything? And so I said it, nothing. And then I did it again on Monday, nothing. Tuesday. At this point, I'm like, is this a joke?
Yeah, somebody got you.
Wednesday rolls around, and all of a sudden, that little voice in the back of my mind is like, you do watch a lot of film. And by the time Saturday rolled around, that little voice was like, screw these guys, let's go play the game. We scored 48 points. We lost. One of those was good. One of those is bad. Neither of those matter. That's just the result. That's the outcome. That's not what we're after. I was able to get out of my own head and get out of my own way. To put this in real world perspective, my wife had a go-to statement for a screaming baby at 3:00 in the morning that reminded her of how much she loved this child. So
I needed that.
It's not just, for sports or athletics, obviously, but that's kind of the idea. If I would have just said I'm the best coach in the state, there's a part of your brain that wants to fix things that's going to say, no, you're not. But when you pair it up with, I put in the time, I put in the work, that same part of your brain's like, you did do that. And so it can't throw out the whole statement. So that's people that think, self-talk is fluffy or fake or things like that. We can watch neurologically different parts of the brain light up as we start to feel a little bit more confident doing some things like this.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that sometimes the brain doesn't know what's real and what's imagined, and that's why if you ever, I mean, I'm sure you have, like you've gone to sleep and you've had this real vivid dream, and you wake up and you're like, man, that steak last night was phenomenal, and your wife goes, we had beef stroganoff. I'm like, oh, like, right? Because the brain doesn't really know. It kind of tricks you in that way.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were going through a couple things. Olympic season just got over. How many, I see it when you're talking about letting the body release, how many sprinters you see shake their legs out, shaking their arms out. They're letting their body let that part out. I heard that clearly.
Watch an NBA, turn on an NBA game, watch guys at the free throw line.
Yeah.
That's all you're going to see.
They're going through a series of, I just got to let everything else out. I love it. And then the self-talk. I believe in this concept of PQ reps, Positive Intelligence, wonderful book. And you got to go through PQ reps, and you got to do this religiously. And just hearing you say that 50 times, I accidentally been doing this, and I'm not taking any credit for it. So I have a phrase a month. And so last month 2 months ago was the past is a place of reference, not of residence. And just really worked on getting out of all those past things I was letting go. But I said it so many times, and this all resonates. And what I'm thinking right now is how many entrepreneurs, how many guys like Josh or Mike are doing this on accident when there's actually an intentionality that can shortcut it when we can pay for wisdom.
Yep. And so then the final step is, okay, how do we take back control of the focus? And we get kind of a little Venn diagram, and we have does it matter right now? And do you edit these things, Jeff?
No.
Or does this go live?
Just keep going.
Great. Well, I screwed that up.
That's okay.
So we've got the two sides of it, and we're going to say, does it matter right now, and can I control it? And so we're going to have 4 boxes, and we're going to write down things like, if you're a golfer and you slice your long iron off into the woods, does that matter? Do you need to fix that? Like, yeah, absolutely. Does it matter right now? No. Things that you can control, things that you can't control. We're talking like you can't control the weather, the refs, how good your opponent is. Things that you can control, your attitude, your effort, your intensity. Does it matter right now, or what matters right now? Usually what we come back to is this shot, or this possession, or this play, or this at bat, whatever that looks like. And it really, we want to give them kind of a focus cue where they're going to be able to say, as my mind starts to drift, nope, I'm coming back to this. And I can see, journaling we've got a podcast episode called Does Journaling Actually Work? Where we kind of talk through like the power of writing those things down. But then there's an element of, you can almost see in your mind like, oh, that was a terrible call by the ref. Oh, but that's in that box, so let's not focus on that. And you can start to kind of redirect yourself a little bit faster. So now that you kind of have these 4 tools, right? You got the breathing, the forced muscular relaxation, the statement, and then what you're going to focus on. Now it's, well, what's our game plan? Because sometimes, maybe you throw a pick, all you got to do is do your breathing, say your statement, we're good to go. Other times, maybe there have been back to back, just terrible things happening, and we got to do like a full reset. We got to use all 4 of the tools. So that's when we go back and figure out what are the times where you might start to get off track, and what do you need to do to redirect yourself. And so I would say this activity is one of the most powerful things that we do. And it's one of the most powerful things I do with individual athletes. And then they need to go do it, and they need to go try it. And a lot of times they'll come back and it's like, okay, we need to make a tweak here or a tweak there, or I don't believe my go-to statement, or, I tried to control my focus, but then I kept being distracted by this. And it's like, okay, well, we can fix all of that, but you've got to go now, try this, implement it, and let's see where we're at.
Just heighten your awareness of it. It's good. How ironic is it? We just did a clarity break episode here in the last couple of weeks. And this sounds so much like I got to get to a clarity break and go through these 5 exercises and then have my go-to statements, my go-to lines, my go-to thinking. The 4 boxes I can think of conversations I've been in just today that if I would have had those 4-box conversation, I would have put it in the right box and been like, this is not worth going there today.
Yeah. And what's rolling through my head is just conversations I've had with clients or with employees or whatever, where they say, I've had a horrible year. Well, why have you had a horrible year? And it's been because of this and this and this and this and this. And it all comes back to really the first thing that happened.
Yep.
It's the quarterback that throws 3 straight picks because they didn't do what they needed to do after the first pick that was thrown.
Didn't reset.
And so, and oftentimes it's that first thing that happens, and then we start to lose our confidence, lose belief in ourselves, lose belief in our companies, whatever it is, or start to make up these excuses. Like, I can't tell you how many times I heard, I'm not doing in sales because of the economy.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Right? Yes. Maybe that has some sort of impact, but then just go find the next guy that wants to buy what you got, right?
Yeah, right.
And so but stopping that after that first challenge or that first failure and resetting, I think, is so important.
And then here's where this becomes even more powerful is let's go back to the curb in the New York City example. Once you live in New York City where people are honking their horns 20 out of 24 hours a day, now all of a sudden, if you're here in little old Westfield and somebody honks the horn, you don't freak out. You just look at where the car's at and it's like, I wonder what their problem is. Or you don't even notice it because you've now rewired your brain. So as you start to respond the right way, as you start to take back control, as you start to be empowered, now all of a sudden when these events happen, you don't even get as far off track to begin with. And that's where, in my mind, the real power comes from. So give them the tools in the short term to take back control of the reactions, but over a long period of time, let's rewire their brain to not get so far off track to begin with.
So my favorite equation, I think you taught it, you read the book Above the Line, events plus response equals outcome. We can actually rewire and train our response mechanisms.
Sure.
We never can control those events. That way we actually dictate the outcome.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's just so many applications, I think, into the business world, right? And I think we're presenting all of this in an athletic context.
Yeah.
But business is just athletic field in a boardroom, right?
is.
And there's so many times where we lose sight of that. And I think there's a lot of really great nuggets here. And so maybe what we do on the next episode, because you're hanging around for the next one, is we start talking about maybe how some of these tools can apply, how we can apply them into the business world,
Sure.
Where our entrepreneurs and our listeners can really get some value from it.
Awesome.
Sound
Man,
good?
thank you so
Thanks
much,
for
Ben.
unpacking that.
Absolutely, guys.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thanks
Awesome.
for
Hey,
having
Ben.
me.